Richard Sherman was recently on his podcast. I want to give a shout out to Richard Sherman because he is providing his thoughts, and it's allowing us to use that as a talking point to voice our opinion. So shout out to Sherman. I'm going to pull up the clip. Hopefully it doesn't get copyrighted or anything, but hold on. I'll start it from the beginning and we'll all react together because I definitely had thoughts about it. Let's see here. All right. This is from the Richard Sherman podcast.
They set him up for failure. And if you fire him, it's such BS because you didn't give him a good enough team to do anything more than what they're doing. They had Devontae for a little while. They traded him away. You let Josh Jacobs go. And so you knew that this wasn't going to be an attractive job last offseason. So did you just give it to Antonio Pierce so that he could bite the bullet this season just to fire him until it was a more attractive position when you have a high draft pick? You set the man up for failure, expected him to fail, fired him for failing with no chance. And if they do that, I'd be so pissed off because that's total BS.
Okay. Mike, do you have initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, my first thought is where he specifically made the terribly wrong point is in assuming, and maybe he's saying that based off of if they kind of purposely set him up. I guess it's everything he's saying is off of the if or the idea that, they purposely set him up for failure so that they could get a good pick. But to me, the thing he said where I was like, is where he said they expected him to fail. I don't think there's a team in the NFL that hires a coach because they expect him to fail. There's no way. I think, if anything, at worst, Mark Davis and the Raiders hired Antonio Pierce this past offseason because the players demanded it.
Yeah.
But really, I think part of that was sort of a reaction, for lack of a better term, from Mark Davis of his past decision making in regards to Rich Bisaccia in a very similar situation, to where he hired the big name guy, big money guy, Josh McDaniels, and it didn't fucking work out. And you couldn't help but sit there and think, man, what would have Rich Bisaccia have been like for a year at least? And it's interesting, but he's saying this, I think, towards the Raiders, like Mark Davis, but it's as far as this season, Antonio Pierce being set up for failure this season, to me, that doesn't make sense because I came out of the offseason, maybe I'm a delusional Raider fan, I came out of this offseason going, holy shit, this team is so much better. The one thing that they didn't get better at was quarterback. In large part because they couldn't draft a quarterback. From what I heard from rumors and reports, they tried to trade up to second, third overall to get a quarterback, but they were there at 13th overall and all the quarterbacks were gone.
They did improve at quarterback, though, a little bit. Gardner Minshew, I would take him over Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yep, I agree. So they went from Jimmy G to Garoppolo, and they still had O'Connell. And to me, I was coming out of that going, well, I've seen Gardner Minshew take a team, I think, or maybe not take a team to the playoffs, but almost take a team to the playoffs and be very capable of winning games. You got Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers. I like Zamir White coming out of last offseason, right? We had Alexander Madison.
Christian Wilkins.
Yeah, Christian Wilkins was the big one, but you also draft Jackson Powers Johnson. And you had this, what seemed like a somewhat healthy battle at right tackle between Thayer Munford and the rookie third rounder, DJ Glaze, right? Dylan Parham at right guard. Everything's fine. everything's fine. It should, in theory, it can be good. It's just, can our offensive coordinator succeed with these quarterbacks? And the answer was fuck no, right? But the way that Richard Sherman poses that is like the Raiders set Antonio Pierce up to fail. And to me, I'm like, well, last year Antonio Pierce succeeded with far less. So how did they set him up to fail? I think what set them up to fail was just their situation overall, having the 13th overall pick, not being able to pick a quarterback in the draft. So this is way before the draft, but in free agency, they played it wisely in picking up a veteran quarterback. And if you remember correctly, in my opinion, I think Gardner Minshew might have been a big Antonio Pierce decision, because he kept talking up, well, part of the reason why I wanted him was because he actually beat us. Which, when I heard that, I was kind of like, God, I hope that's not really your reasoning. But I guess I get it, But, that's what Antonio Pierce said, was like, that guy played really good against us. I wanted him on my team. Okay. Well, Aaron Rodgers plays pretty good too. And, sometimes, Russell Wilson has played good in his past, but I guess because he didn't play good against us on the Broncos, he didn't want him. It's whatever. It's fine. I don't blame, like, hindsight 2020, right? But it's hard for me to come out of this season, especially hindsight 2020, but coming out of last offseason saying, yeah, man, Antonio Pierce is set up to fucking fail. Like, the only reason I would say that is because of the quarterback situation, but it's not because the Raiders chose the quarterback situation. It's not because they chose to be forced to pick up Gardner Minshew and not be able to draft a quarterback. It's because that's the best they could do, So now the team sucked, and trading Davante Adams, yeah, the Raiders chose to do that. Well, fucking why? Because he demanded a trade. So it's not like they were just thinking like, how can we fuck Antonio Pierce over more? Oh, we could trade Davante Adams. Yeah, let's get Christian Wilkins hurt on purpose as he's celebrating. And right as maybe we want to switch quarterbacks, Aiden O'Connell will break his thumb, and then when Gardner Minshew is the only quarterback left, he'll fucking get hurt, and then 2 weeks later, O'Connell's going to come back and he's going to tear his ACL. So I don't know. This is just a bad season. I think a lot of it is bad luck. I think a lot of it is the offensive coordinator decision and the quarterback predicament that they were forced into. Like, again, getting Gardner Minshew, not a bad decision, but not being able to draft a quarterback, not good for business, right? Because clearly in hindsight, the two quarterbacks that we had was not enough this season. But they had the talent. Like, in theory, if things worked to start the season, Davante Adams isn't begging to leave. He's trying to fight for a playoff, spot. That's what he wants. And it didn't work out in New York, but he got to go to a quarterback that he wants to play with, right?
Yeah.
Whereas here, he didn't have that. So I think it's just circumstantial, and it's unfortunate for Antonio Pierce, but at the same time, like, this is the end of my rant. I'm sorry. I'm sure you have a lot
you're good.
of thoughts too, but there have been week in and week out odd decision-making from Antonio Pierce as far as timeouts, kicking a field goal, or going for it on fourth down. Like, there was a lot of that today against the Buccaneers. And I think my conclusion to this season is like, yeah, that's not a guy that should be a head coach in this league. He should be, more of a linebackers coach, maybe defensive coordinator. I think, honestly, maybe where Antonio Pierce would thrive most is back in college as a head coach, because he's got now a good experience being a head coach. But, college and the NFL is a different beast. I wish nothing but success for Antonio Pierce, but I don't think it's going to come as the Raiders head coach. And it's not because the Raiders set him up for failure. It's because I don't think he's just not that guy. He's not that coach, you know. But a lot of shit that happened this season towards the Raiders was circumstantial and unfortunate, and that dates back to the draft and, you know, deciding to go with Gardner Minshew as the veteran quarterback over a guy like Russell Wilson, you know. And I don't know who that's on, but that's not because they specifically failed Antonio Pierce. Like, he was a part of that decision making. So,
yeah. So, is it okay if I take the floor? Okay. I want to quickly start off by, just giving, showing respect to Richard Sherman, because I absolutely do respect his football opinion. At once I did hate him as a player because obviously I'm a Niner fan. Sherman would understand that. Would understand why.
yeah.
Because at one point he was the best corner in the game, and we tried him with a certain receiver, named Crabtree.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, I think it's important to take a look at, or like, let's just kind of go through the timeline, and I'll kind of give, obviously Richard Sherman comprehends football at a higher level than I ever can, because he's such a high IQ player and he's actually lived it. But all right, I'm just going to offer my perspective. So let's recap this timeline real quick. The Raiders were on to Josh McDaniels after firing Gruden, and Bizak, they had the Rich Bisaccia, is it Bisaccia? Yeah, interim coach who actually took him to the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
So similar situation, firing a coach mid-season, or I guess letting go of a coach and having an interim coach. So, they had that Gruden Bisaccia situation. And then afterwards they hired Josh McDaniels and decided not to hire Bisaccia because they felt that at the time the best move to make was to hire Josh McDaniels, who has won Super Bowls, as the offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots, right?
Yep.
They thought that they could, strike gold, that he would be, the perfect play caller to match up with Derek Carr. They were going to bring Devontae Adams over. Was Devontae Adams, was he there for McDaniel's first year, or just
I want to say yes. I want to say that was Dave Ziegler,
his first year.
Like that was that was Ziegler's first draft. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that season they didn't even finish with Derek Carr, right? So they got rid of a quarterback who has been there for, nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
Nearly a decade, right? And purely for contract reasons, but also maybe play time. I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was a good time for them both to part ways from each other. But the problem is they never got Carr's replacement. That was the problem. Yeah. The replacement was Jimmy G, who, I'm not gonna lie, I was in my opinion, very curious to see what he would look like back in Josh McDaniels' offense, because it did look good in New England.
Right. I saw the vision.
And then under Kyle Shanahan, I kind of felt like Jimmy G was a little bit limited. Like he had to throw to the exact receivers, run the specific plays. I didn't feel like he had enough freedom, and then he gets under Josh McDaniels' system and Jimmy Garoppolo, like, it's just not good. I think the Raiders might have been 3-3 with Garoppolo, or starting and finishing games. So it just wasn't good, and Garoppolo was not the best quarterback on the roster. I think O'Connell was visually, in that preseason, he was better. He was better than Jimmy G, at least what they showed the entire season. The better body of work is what Aiden O'Connell did. And Antonio Pierce, when he came in and took over after Josh McDaniels, that was the first thing that he identified. Was he benched Jimmy Garoppolo and said, Aiden O'Connell is our best quarterback. And so O'Connell started playing, right? So the reason why they fired Josh McDaniels is he was a disappointment. The team was an embarrassment. They had just gotten embarrassed by the Lions, right? Before he got fired. And he was trick-or-treating with his kids when he got the news that he was fired.
Yeah.
So
Halloween ruined.
Yeah, Halloween ruined. Worst trick ever. But no. They were an embarrassment, and the entire team did not respect the head coach because he drew a line in the sand between himself and the Patriots and the Raiders. While he is the current head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, Antonio Pierce was the one in the locker room who brought up an example of facing adversity when they played against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And Josh McDaniels said,
Sorry, I'm sure everybody that hears this probably knows what you're talking about. It's possible that that's not true. I want to say Max Crosby debunked that, but I could be wrong. It might have been something more along the lines of like something like that was said, but it's not exactly reported correctly. I'm not sure, but we could fact check it if we want, but I'm not sure if it's true or not. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, Josh McDaniels, if it's not true, come on our show and tell us it's not true.
Yeah. At the very least, he was definitely drawing a line between he and the players. That's what the vibe certainly was the players were like, this dude is not it. Like, he's not listening to us, all of that, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's like the main point. Like, it was he could not connect with his players. Yeah. And so he was fired. And then Antonio Pierce was given the position, to finish out the season. There was nothing long-term about it. It was, in the NFL, once you fire a coach, somebody has to be the guy in command. And the players really felt like Antonio Pierce connected with them. Right? And so Antonio Pierce being Antonio Pierce is a natural leader, I will say.
Yeah.
I think he's a natural leader, even though he called his team the worst team in the league. But I get what he was saying. I get what he was saying.
Yeah.
But he was meant to just come in and, do whatever. But the players bought into what Antonio Pierce was selling. And what Antonio Pierce was selling was that this was going to be a player-led team. This was going to be a player-first team. And, all right. Can you kind of help me at this part, Mike? What exactly was Antonio Pierce's thing when he first came on? I'm kind of blanking on I do remember it was player first.
Yeah, but I think he's definitely more personable than McDaniels, in comparison. Former player, so he gets the players. Like you said, player-led team. It was more of a we and not this is the Patriot way or this is the way type of thing. It's more of we're going to do it our way rather than doing it this old-fashioned or whatever type, pen to paper type way. And it was the buy-in, and all those things combined, getting the team to buy into him, pretty much immediately. He's a leader. Because he's a leader, he's a natural leader of men. I think that had an effect because Josh McDaniels wasn't.
Yeah. And long story short, the players wanted to play hard for him. Yep. They genuinely did. And so they did. And so they ended up finishing out the season 5-4, right? And the locker room, the post-game locker room vibes after they would win was actually crazy in retrospect. Smoking cigars for a losing football team, smoking cigars and just the way the vibe around it, the aura, it was crazy. you know, and I sort of mentioned like you kind of have to be careful. Like I kind of feel like the coach isn't supposed to be the player's friend. You know, Bill Walsh always thought that there has to be a fine line between, you know, like or a good distance between the players and the coaches.
Mm.
And if the players hated the coach is doing the right job.
Mm.
Like obviously hate in a good way, you know,
Right.
not in a Josh McDaniels way. Like hate as
Probably
in
like he's pushing me and
pushes
he's
them
not acknowledging how good I or something. Yeah.
pushing them to, you know, to the limits. Like it's not supposed to be fun. It's hard work.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Not like not I guess the way Josh McDaniels did it was it just rubbed the players the wrong way. Like
Not personable.
not there was nothing redeeming about it because they were not winning football games.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
winning cures a lot.
Yep. Oh
If-
yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
not winning-
if they were, yes, like the Patriots, I'm sure they like a lot of the Patriots players probably fucking hated like the offseason or like training camp and stuff. But being 11-2 every single year in and year out, probably is a worthy payoff for all that hard work, you know. And
Yeah.
winning 6 fucking Super Bowls, like nobody's gonna complain.
Yep.
So
They get
yeah.
bounced in the first round of the playoffs once, and then Brady's fucking out of town,
Yeah.
and then wins the Super Bowl the next place. You know, the next place that he went, literally the next year.
Yep.
But so where I'm going with this is the players definitely. It seemed like they enjoyed playing for Antonio Pierce because it's very stark contrast between Josh McDaniels and Antonio Pierce. Pierce, I mean, he gave them freedom and he gave them belief in the Raider way. Antonio Pierce from day one was like, all right, we're going to do things the Raider way, you know? And there was like this belief in the building. Yes, a couple of those games were not that impressive of wins, but I mean, a win's a win in the NFL sometimes, you know? It gives players, it boosts the morale of players. Like, yeah, it was a lost cause to make the playoffs. Well, actually, no, the Raiders almost made the playoffs, but they blew it in the end.
Yeah.
But so then you have the players saying, if it's not Antonio Pierce, I got to think about my future. I'm talking about Max Crosby. Max Crosby is the super Raider. He is the Raiders right now.
I think Devontae was saying a lot of it too.
Yeah. When you think about the Raiders, you think about Max Crosby. Devontae Adams was also saying that he wants Max Crosby as his head coach. Right?
Mm.
So you have these players telling the owner exactly who they want and kind of threatening, you know, I just don't understand it if it's not him.
Mm.
So it puts Mark Davis in this position where he does not want to make the same mistake that he made last time with the Bazakia deal, right?
Yep.
So we still don't even know the length of Antonio Pierce's contract. We still have not gotten confirmation on that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's a 2-year deal.
For some reason, that's the gut feeling.
Yeah, that's my assumption. That's not fact. I would love to be corrected if it is out there and I just, can't find it.
Mm.
So Antonio Pierce has been given an opportunity to be the head coach of the Raiders, not like this massive extension to our knowledge, but to prove it, to prove himself and to build on what they accomplished the last season.
Yep.
Now they're worse than they ever were. The Josh McDaniels team who was underachieving, they were at least 3 and something, to that point in the season. They were 3 and 4 or something, 3 and 5. Something like that.
I have a massive point off of that, but I can say
go ahead.
Well, all right. I talked about the offensive coordinator. I'll try to be as quick as possible. I talked about the offensive coordinator choice, which one thing I didn't say was they didn't even get the guy that they really wanted. Like, it seemed like Cliff Kingsbury was apparently the guy, if not somebody else. And then he went off, left, like, at best, I'm already forgetting his name, but our offensive coordinator that they hired this offseason,
Luke Getsy.
Luke Getsy, he was at best their second choice, probably more like their third or fourth choice to be their offensive coordinator. So, like, that's that's not the Raiders choosing to do that. That was their circumstance, right? Again. But here's another one. Like, this is a knock that I have towards Antonio Pierce this year that I think you and I talked about maybe off screen. I don't think we talked about it on the pod, but I could be wrong. But Antonio Pierce, in my opinion, deserves blame, at least some of the blame, for the fact that they chose Gardner Minshew as a quarterback, which a lot of that is on Tom Telesco, I'm sure, right? As far as evaluating quarterback talent and saying, yeah, this is the guy that we're going to sign, right? And what also goes into that.
You just said Antonio Pierce said that he beat him.
Well, yeah. Yes, but still,
I get what you mean. I'm just being an
the
ass.
GM has to make the So, but what also goes into that is like, well, does Russell Wilson even want to come to the Raiders? Which I want to say the rumor was he did. Did I say Russell Wilson?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I meant. But also Justin Fields, like there was the trade possibility with that, and like, oh, he just played with what's his face from Chicago, the offensive coordinator,
Luke Getsy,
and all these other quarterback options, but they went with Minshew. The knock that I have towards Antonio Pierce here is Antonio Pierce was the guy who was making the call because he's the head coach. Who is going to be the starter week 1? And he went with Gardner Minshew. And in my opinion, at least coming out of that Chiefs game last week, my thought process was all season, and then the Chiefs game being kind of I told you, he made the wrong decision. Right? Like, that's not because the Raiders told him what to do. That's not because Tom Telesco forced him to do that. At best, it's because they couldn't draft a quarterback. And I think if we're being honest, we all know deep down that Antonio Pierce, if he could have, he would have done anything to get Jaden Daniels. And I'll give him credit, I guess, but like, who wouldn't, right? Especially knowing how close he was to him. Like, Of course he wanted him. But making the wrong call as a starting quarterback and then all these weird timeout decisions and whatnot, like that, those all have to be tacked against Antonio Pierce. It's just the quarterback decisions this year is just I blame a lot of that on Antonio Pierce. So,
well, I think also too, it's like the results just aren't there. You don't just like you don't accidentally become 2 and what are they 2 and 11 right now?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
You don't accidentally stumble upon that.
Yes. And I'm so sorry. This is my last point, and you can finish yours.
No, go ahead.
They played good with Aiden O'Connell last year with I'm talking rookie play caller, right? Like a guy who had never called plays in the NFL before, and they played good with Aiden O'Connell. You bring in a veteran quarterback, and you determine Antonio Pierce that he's even better than Aiden O'Connell. This is my point that I was trying to make. Gardner Minshew, he's more prepped. He's better. He's more ready-made for the moment. He is our best bet above Aiden O'Connell, who won me games last year on a shittier, in my opinion, on paper, shittier team last year. Aiden O'Connell won us games. This guy gives us a better chance to win games. And they're 2-11. So
this is how I feel about that. All right. At the time, I'm not going to lie. I admit I thought that Gardner Minshew gave the Raiders a better chance to win, just purely for his mobility.
Yeah.
I will say that in hindsight, the first crack at the job should have been given to Aiden O'Connell just in reflection to, all right, Antonio Pierce, he is now the Raiders coach because he took advantage of an opportunity that he was given.
Mhm.
So Aiden O'Connell shares that accomplishment, what they accomplished last season, with Antonio Pierce.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they were both starting all those games, right? Like Antonio Pierce was the head coach, Aiden O'Connell was the quarterback. They are now, they're a tandem. They come in a pair. You give O'Connell. It was O'Connell's job, I think, to lose. I think they should have rolled out O'Connell as the starter and not killed his confidence so early. My biggest, I guess, issue was with how they handled O'Connell's confidence. Because they benched him in that preseason game when it was still a competition. They benched him after throwing a pick six.
Mm.
And that was the last throw that he had for a while until he ended up having to play in another real game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I didn't like that. And it was essentially, I see it like this. Mark Davis could have gone with a better candidate than Antonio Pierce, right? He could have gone with a better candidate, but he felt like everybody felt like Antonio Pierce had earned, the opportunity to be the head coach. Antonio Pierce had an opportunity to grant that same, I guess, opportunity to Aiden O'Connell, and he didn't. So that's probably, if we want to talk about football sins, that could be considered a football sin, because it wasn't like they signed Aaron Rodgers. It was, well, I guess the Aaron Rodgers now is not the Aaron Rodgers that I'm referring to,
Yes.
But it's not like they signed,
Well, 2024 Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Which again, hindsight 2020, but still, it's like clearly they signed the wrong guy.
Yeah. Minshew is not a great quarterback. He was great for the price that they got him for. Like, I'll take Minshew at his current price over many quarterbacks in the league.
Right. But again, with Russell Wilson, that was part of it, was like, well, whoever signs him is getting him to a fucking singing deal because the Broncos are still paying his contract. So, like, to me, at the time, it was like, I don't really think I want Russell Wilson. And my biggest issue was I didn't think he fit with the locker room. But, man, I mean, sometimes some deals are too good to pass up. Like, if the defense plays good and Christian Wilkins doesn't get hurt and if we start hot, maybe Devontae doesn't want to get traded because he's got this former Super Bowl quarterback that's throwing him passes now. Who knows what we're doing right now with Russell Wilson? But again, the last thing I'll say here is I think a big part of this is Luke Getsy. I think he just sucked, and that might have had a bad effect on even Gardner Minshew. And that's not because the Raiders chose, above all else, Luke Getsy. That's situational. So it's not like, the Raiders failed him. I just think the situation failed him at best. But I think also Antonio Pierce failed himself.
What happened to the play caller last year? Was it Bo Hardigree? What happened to him?
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you. He
So
might have went to some college team, like as an offense coordinator. I'm not sure. I'll find out.
Like literally the same thing, the same mistake that I've identified. What he did with O'Connell, shooting down his confidence. Like, after having an opportunity to grant the same, I guess, deal that he was granted. I mean, he thought he was upgrading, and in the NFL, you do need to constantly be upgrading, but maybe they could have been better on offense this year.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay,
they couldn't have been much worse.
I want to say the report from oh man, I'm forgetting who the reporter was, but anyways, first off, Bo Hardigree, he's the quarterback coach for the Tennessee Titans. But I want to say the thing with Cliff Kingsbury was one of two things. Either he wanted a third year on the contract and they wanted to just do 2, or it was something about, obviously money, which either way, it's about money. But I still think a big part of it was him realizing, like, wait, Washington's interested, like right as the buzzer was, about to buzz, and realize, like, well, with them, I'm going to draft a quarterback, and with the Raiders, like, I'm kind of looking at this, and they might not be able to get a quarterback that I want to coach. Like, he has all the questions to be asking about the Raiders quarterback situation, whereas the Commanders, it's like, well, it's one of two guys. It's either the guy that everybody thinks should be the number 1 pick, or it's going to be Jaden Daniels. And it was the better of the two so far.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what my point was there. Just, it's like, in hindsight, what was really the holdup there with Kingsbury's contract? Like the fact that they fumbled that, it's like, that's my best chance at agreeing with Richard Sherman. That's it. Is because they fumbled that offensive coordinator decision.
Yeah. And what Richard Sherman doesn't talk about is, all right, why did Devontae Adams vouch for Antonio Pierce so hard this offseason and then, like, very quickly wanted out?
And vouch for fucking Luke Getsy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, another thing Richard Sherman did touch on was letting go of Josh Jacobs. I can tell you this right now. Yes, the Raiders are worse now without Josh Jacobs. Does Josh Jacobs all of a sudden make the Raiders a playoff team? No. Does Josh Jacobs fix all their problems? No. Some of them, yes. Josh Jacobs can mask some problems, but Sincere McCormick right now is doing fine, and the Raiders are still losing games.
Yeah, I think especially early on this season with how bad the run blocking was, like, it would have looked so bad that it would have been the Raiders are overpaying Josh Jacobs. That's what it would have been. And I think part of that was, like, you get this new GM who wants to build the team the right way, and it's like, technically speaking, re-signing a running back doesn't make sense. Like, that signing running backs, I think, as the proof is in the pudding, signing running backs to big contracts is things that winning teams do, at least successfully, right? It's when the team is successfully built to support a running back like that, then it just becomes OP. McCaffrey to the Niners, Derrick Henry to the Ravens, Josh Jacobs to the Packers, David Montgomery to the Lions, Saquon to the Eagles. Like, those teams were built to support running backs like that, and they're fucking killing it because of that. Whereas if the Raiders kept Josh Jacobs, it's like, all right, enjoy 2.8 yards per game every single game. That's not worth $15 million a year or whatever. He would have been demanding 14, whatever it was. No thanks.
Yeah, all the worst running back contracts always seem to come from the worst teams. It's a good running back going to a bad team. Miles Sanders,
DeAndre Swift,
Miles Sanders, and Miles Sanders. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, DeAndre Swift. Yeah, it's you have to, you have to fix all the other problems on the team, in my opinion, before you start taking on running backs because they do not last as long as other players.
Yeah. You got to be in a win now window.
So Josh Jacobs, theoretically, if the Raiders did sign him to a massive extension, what did Jacobs get with the Packers?
I want to say it's around $14 million per year, but it's like, I want to say it goes down each year. I could be wrong. Like he gets paid
4 years.
Uh-huh.
It's a 4-year deal. And Josh Jacobs right now is how old?
It's like probably 26.
Josh Jacobs.
Maybe 25.
Yeah, he's 26. He turns 27 in February. So pretty soon here.
Damn.
4 years from now, Josh Jacobs will be turning 31.
30. Yeah.
Like he's
going on 31.
Like,
yeah.
And he led the league in rushing just a couple years ago. Like running backs do not last very long.
Yep.
I don't know. I love Josh Jacobs as a player. He's a fantastic running back. He's one of the best in the NFL. He is a running back that you are supposed to sign. But by the time the Raiders would have been able to be serious about contending for any sort of playoff scenario, Josh Jacobs' career, Josh Jacobs would be at the end of his contract, and you would have the same issue again.
Yep.
So I don't know. Misevaluating Zamir White is also another shortcoming. Well, not necessarily misevaluating Zamir White, but just they never established a run game. And like I said, they didn't really build off of last season. Like it's a bad look for Antonio Pierce that they are worse now having a full off season with his coaching than coming off the season where the off season was Josh McDaniels and he took over in between and was able to provide the leadership and they were able to rally around him. Now the rally's gone. Why aren't they winning football games? Obviously we know now it's better that they don't win football games so they can get their quarterback. But there's no guarantee that even if you give Antonio Pierce the first overall pick in the draft, there's no guarantee he's going to pick the right one. He played linebacker.
Right.
Could he find the person
who get the right offensive coordinator?
Yeah. Could he find the person who knows, what to look for in a quarterback? Yeah, he could. Will he? Well, he just hired Luke Getsy, who was horrible as offensive coordinator. His freaking quarterback coach was Rich Scangarillo. Horrible.
Yeah.
He got fired too. That's another hire that's just bad. Aiden O'Connell has regressed. Gardner Minshew has regressed, having been coached by those guys, or by Rich Scangarillo and Luke Getsy.
I think when Antonio Pierce was hired, I want to say one of us, I'm not sure who, made the point of I think it might have been you. You were saying, well, one thing about Antonio Pierce that's a little sketchy is what are the relationships that he has in the league? Because that's a big part of hiring. That's a big part of hiring the rest of the coaching staff. Yeah. So what did he end out with? One of the worst quarterback coaches, one of the worst offensive line coaches, and one of the worst offensive coordinators. Probably because he doesn't have the best connections in the league. He brought on Marvin Lewis, Joe Philbin, and later on Norv Turner. But what has that got him? So.
Yeah, you know what? I don't guarantee it because I don't know, but my hunch, it went a little something like this, All right, we got to hire a new quarterback coach, and it's, all right, let's look at successful organizations. oh, the 49ers had this Rich Scangarillo guy. Oh man, oh yeah, let's call him in for an interview. Let's see what he's got. And Rich Scangarillo is like, yeah, everything good about the quarterbacks over there. Like, I was able to do this, I was able to do that. We went to NFC Championship games. We went to a Super Bowl. Yeah, that Trey Lance kid. I just didn't see it with him, and I'm not going to coach a guy, coach a kid if my heart's not in it. So I stopped coaching the 49ers. Didn't want to coach Trey Lance, right? And they're like, oh, you know what? Trey Lance isn't that good. This guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to quarterbacks. So that like he kind of, he could have weaseled his way in the interview to getting hired, but he wasn't.
That or every quarterback coach that they wanted kept getting fucking hired before they could hire him.
Yeah. So Cliff Kingsbury would have been the hire. Things would have been maybe a little bit different, hopefully. But yeah, I just see regression from the Raider quarterbacks, and I don't think that it is a coincidence that Rich Scangarillo is the quarterback coach. Because, I just don't – I'm not a professional, but I just don't – like some of the drills I see, I just don't think they're very helpful. And in today's NFL, you only get a limited amount of time to practice. And the only thing I've seen – and maybe this is a Shanahan thing and not a Rich Scangarillo thing, but the only thing I've seen is regression from quarterbacks. Because like literally when they come in, they're like, all right, I'm going to be undefeated and like the greatest quarterback of all time. And then there's nowhere to go but down.
Yeah. One other thing about Luke Getsy is, remember when he got hired and I was kind of like trying to get a vibe of him and the Bears offense, was that he liked to run the ball a lot. And then what was he able to do with the run game with the Raiders was fuck nothing, which if that's his offensive identity, like no shit, it didn't work. Right.
Yeah.
And the quarterback coach sucked at helping the quarterbacks. And just the Bears offense last year wasn't good. So, maybe it was fucked from the get-go. But, again, that's not because the Raiders wanted it that way. It's just situationally what happened. And I think your situation matters in the sense of, again, having the 13th overall pick relative to having the 2nd overall pick. How much cap space you have, all that stuff. Like, I think when it comes to hiring a coach, that sort of stuff matters to where, like, was it Chris, the Bears fan? Like he was saying earlier of like, well, why am I forgetting their quarterback's name? Caleb Williams. Caleb fucked our chance of getting Ben Johnson this offseason. Which I don't even think I said it, but like, I don't know if Ben Johnson wants to go to a division rival of the Lions to begin with. But even so, like, let's just say Chris is right that like Caleb's been so bad that Ben Johnson's like, I don't want to fucking go there. Like that, the same could be said last offseason about Jim Harbaugh looking at the Raiders, or just as somebody as simple as Cliff Kingsbury. That's the best example I could give is seeing, okay, 13th overall pick. Currently only Aiden O'Connell, but in March we can get somebody like, okay, Gardner Minshew. Or I could go to Washington and draft one of the top prospects in college football, and and we've seen what he's done with that, right?
Yeah.
I think this year the Raiders are going to have, I'm hoping, a top 2 pick, hoping the first pick. I think a coach is going to see that. I think some offensive play callers are going to see that, and Brock Bowers and an okay offensive line, at least on paper, and say, I can do something with this. I can draft a running back in the 4th round and, a quarterback in the 1st round and probably get some good shit done here pretty quickly. Will it happen? I don't know, but situationally, us versus, let's just say the New York Giants, well, they're in the same predicament, actually. we'll see who has the first or second pick, and they have Malik Neighbors, so it's kind of similar to like Bowers Neighbors type thing. Well, okay, give me another team that's probably going to lose their coach. Like, let's just say the Titans. Let's just say they're not going to.
Like, is going to lose their coach or has already lost their coach, has an interim coach.
Good point. It's like the Jets
the Bears. Yeah, Bears.
I mean, the Bears have Caleb Williams, former first overall pick. I think of all the teams I've named so far, so let's just say Raiders, Giants, Jets, Bears, and let's just throw in the Titans. I think the team I want to go the least right now is probably the Jets. Because I couldn't tell you who their quarterback's going to be in a year from now.
Can you rename the teams again?
Raiders, Giants, who are probably top 2 picks. Jets, Bears, obviously Caleb, and then Titans. It'd be between the Titans and the Jets for me.
Yeah, Titans are probably. I would rather go to the Jets than the Titans.
Yeah, they also do have Devontae and stuff. The thing with the Titans though is I don't think they're firing their coach. I think they give him another year. So, and then I'm trying to think of any other team. Oh, the Jags. That's a good one. They're not keeping their fucking coach.
Yeah.
There's no way. And, I mean, they have Trevor. I don't know. I think the Raiders are going to have, like, top 2, top 3 cap space plus top 2 pick. Like, I think some coaches will see that and be like, I can get something done here. And one of the best practice facilities, indoor stadium. Like, I don't know. I think if I'm a head coach or, candidate, I'd be like, I could do something here. But maybe I'm optimistic, delusional Raider fan.
Well, why wasn't Jim Harbaugh interested?
I think last year's situation. I think a mixture of that, but also I think Jim Harbaugh might have been a special case of he was only interested in one place. Just like 2, 3, 4 years ago when it was the Vikings. Like he was only interested in the Vikings, and that might have only been a leverage ploy because he only wanted to go to Michigan on an extension. I think Harbaugh might be a little different than most coaching candidates. Like he's more detail or not detail oriented.
He can pick and choose.
Yeah, because he's that good. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of finishing thoughts, I don't think that they hired Antonio Pierce and set him up to fail. I think what the way I see it is they gave him an opportunity to keep the job long term.
Yep.
They gave him all right, you can at least try, which in the NFL there is no room for just trying. It's a win now league. You have to, I think it was. I don't think that Antonio Pierce was the absolute best candidate that they could have gotten, but you could make the argument that he earned an opportunity to try and coach the team going forward. And that's what Mark Davis gave to Antonio Pierce. Well, not gave. Antonio Pierce, earned it. But at least Mark Davis granted the opportunity, all right, you earned it. The team loves you. The fan base, loves you. We'll give this a shot. And instead of them failing him, I think you could make the case that I think Antonio Pierce did not live up, it's not even so much that they had high expectations, because I don't even think there was high expectations for this team going forward. But what are the redeeming factors that Antonio Pierce has displayed this season that signify, hey, you know what? He was able to accomplish this, and this season. So that's why I would give him an opportunity to run it back, in 2025. Richard Sherman's reasoning is, oh, well, he didn't do this, because this, that, and that,
Right.
because they set him up to fail. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, still, what has he shown this season that tells you, hey, you know what? We shouldn't look for another head coach.
Mhm.
Right?
Right. Yep.
That's stupid.
Uh,
That's stupid.
For the most part, all he has shown is that he is extremely flawed as a head coach. That's all he showed this year. Extremely flawed in decision making. Mostly, yeah, decision making, but also like the the team's willing to fight for him vibe has kind of gone away, mostly because of losing. Right, winning fixes everything. They were winning games last year, so it felt like, wow, they really do fight for him. This year they're not winning, so it's like, yeah, no, they don't. But you know, um, his decision making when it comes to timeouts, or something as simple as timeouts, or something as big as who the quarterback is, flawed. Flawed. Like you couldn't ask me to find something specifically from this season that says, yeah, he should be the head coach next year. I couldn't tell you a single thing.
I could give you more reasons as to why he should not be the head coach.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest reasons was, for him being the head coach was his players wanted to play for him.
Mm-hmm.
Devontae Adams, reason number one of why not. Max Crosby says he's losing his mind with every loss. Business decisions. The players were no longer bought in. They were making business decisions on the field.
Yeah.
Under his watch.
Yep.
That's his team. It's not the team he inherited anymore. This is Antonio Pierce's team. He could have gutted the roster for all we know, So I think that Antonio Pierce shares some blame for that. And I encourage anyone in the comments, maybe I'm not seeing it from the proper perspective, and I encourage Richard Sherman, if he ever sees this, which I don't think that he has time to, or, maybe doesn't even care for it. Give me a few reasons as to why Antonio Pierce has earned an opportunity this year to be the coach next year.
Yeah. I'd say my last thought is like what you were saying about just them hiring him from the get-go of like, well, they gave him his chance, to earn, or he earned his chance, and they gave him this opportunity to truly be the head coach and to show that he's, deserving of that. Like, I feel like dating back to when they hired him, it's like shame if you do, shame if you don't.
Yeah.
Like if you do hire him, it was like, well, hindsight 2020, well, that clearly wasn't going to work. But if you didn't hire him, we would have heard way more people like Richard Sherman being like, what are the Raiders fucking doing? I mean, how dare they? How dare they not give him a chance?
Yeah.
And now they did, and it's like, look at them.
Dude, literally Antonio Pierce, if he didn't get hired, it would be like the Raiders version of I mean, as a Niner fan, I'm always like the what could have been for if Jim Harbaugh was still, had not been fired.
Yeah.
And so it would just be like, I could already see it in an alternate universe. The Raiders don't bring back Antonio Pierce, and all the fans are like Rich Bazakia. There's still Raider fans that talk about it. Yeah, we should have just hired Bazakia.
Yeah. What's funny talking about all this? And like this is slightly off topic. But with talking about Josh McDaniels and like the fact that they hired him and stuff, I can't help but sit here and think like maybe that was actually like a blessing in disguise just to get through that and, within a season and a half be done with it. Because now that they brought on Tom Brady, I can't help but wonder if he would have been like Josh McDaniels, hire him, And now you have Brady as a part owner. Like, do they fire him as quickly as they did? And then earlier you were talking about like, Antonio Pierce, promising this player-led team. I started laughing to myself because other than Ben Johnson, I think who might be the best candidate right now off the top of my head, and there's probably other candidates. There's plenty of like I know I want an offensive-minded coach. There's probably plenty of, offensive-minded coaches available out there. But I think the second best choice behind Ben Johnson currently to me is Mike Vrabel. And I can't help but think he is the polar opposite of Antonio Pierce because he is such like even though he's a former player, former linebacker, all those things, that dude is like Patriot way to a T. But defensively, not offensively, which is different. It's more like shut the fuck up and listen instead of like, all right, so here's how we're gonna do the plays and like, Josh McDaniels not being personable. It's like Vrabel's personable, but he's one of those coaches that you're gonna hate. Like I listened to Bussin' with the Boys and Taylor Lewan and Will Compton will talk about it. They fucking hate him, but they also love him. Like when they are
Yes.
when they are when they are getting coached by him, they fucking despise him. But personally, they love him to death.
That's what it is. So I was like, bringing up the whole Bill Walsh thing about like if the players hated him, then he's doing his job. But that's exactly it. It's hating, but then there's also love with the hate. And with Josh McDaniels, there was no redeeming quality, to it. It was just like, man, we really dislike this guy. They were not bought in. He did not do anything to get them to buy in. So,
yeah.
And Antonio Pierce did, and that's why he earned, the opportunity. And right now, him coaching his team, it's not as good as when he was coaching Josh McDaniels' team. And that's a fact.
Yep.
So, yeah. But like I said, I respect Richard Sherman. I just, don't exactly see eye to eye with his opinion on it, right? So, yeah, it is what it is. If anybody in the comments wants to, let us know what you think about it, feel free. Even if it's not live, we take a look at the comments, and we'll respond to comments on YouTube. It is 2 a.m. It was a great show.
Great.
Yeah. It was a fantastic show. I want to give a quick thank you to everybody who's still watching us live. I do see a couple people still watching us live here at 2 a.m. And especially, oh my God, Frank, I thought you went to bed. Frank said, good night, gentlemen. Thanks again. Frank, like practically an hour ago, said, gentlemen, thank you once again. It's always worth staying up for your show. Please continue the outstanding work. Much appreciated. See you fellas next time. Frank, did you go to bed and are you waking up and do you hear the police siren?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Mike and I, well, actually
we don't even live as close anymore, and I still hear them.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could hear it through the mic. That was crazy.
You're probably going
sounds like a lot.
Right. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot. Not to derail the show, but yeah, no. Honestly, where was I? Oh yeah, Frank. Did you go to bed and wake up for work already? That's so
Damn.
Yeah.
There's some shit going on at 2 a.m. in San Leandro.
That is okay.
They're getting closer to me.
Yeah, they're getting further from me. So, oh, dude, you're light. Do change the light. Change the light.
Let me just open my window really quick. Or I'll be right back. Oh no. They're here.
Oh God. Bad boys, what you go? That's him, officer. Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah. So Frank says, no, I was here all the way. Anthony C, welcome back in. Says great show. No, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. I want to also thank Chris Foster for tuning into the show today. Mr. Amazing, Fonzie, and there might have been one more person who commented, but if not, definitely if you just watch the show and are still watching to this point, you are having a better time than whoever's getting chased by the police near our house. That was a lot.
No, that was. It might not just be police. I don't know.
I hope it is just police.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, everybody, I hope you guys all have a great night. If you guys want to follow us on Twitter, we're at silver_goldpod on Twitter. And yeah, if not, you can follow us directly. If you want to, let's just say you like Mike's takes a little bit more, you can follow him directly on Twitter at mforrester9, or, you can follow me directly at, on Twitter at jck510. And yeah, like I said, it was a great show. Hope everybody has a great night. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week. Peace.